We are here today to hear Dr. Sarah Stebbins talk about You Are Not Your Job. But we also have a few other things that we want to inform you about here in the AMA going forward. And some upcoming events. We have our craft marketing series that's coming up. It's going to be Emma Roloff. She's going to talk about winning friends and influencing people on LinkedIn. So that will be coming up the last Tuesday in January, and the 25th, 5:30. I believe we've moved that to virtual now, given the state that we're in with COVID. Then on February 8th, our signature series over the noon hour, for those of you in Madison Central Time Zone, we're hitting video content on Right with Tony Now of T60 Productions. And then we'll see February 22nd, again, last Tuesday in February, Greg Michio will be talking about the power of the niche. So niche marketing for 2022. And that's at 5:30 p.m. in the evening. And then finally, we have on March 8th, 5-Star State of Mind. Emily Washkovic from Yelp will be talking about online reputation management and improving your opportunity for review. And then getting started with that AMA, just want to thank all of you that are here that are AMA members. Obviously, your membership allows you to join us for free. However, if you're not a member of the AMA, it's very easy to come in, gives you an opportunity to network with other marketing and like-minded professionals. We have experts that we're bringing in all the time to speak. You can learn from them. You can also use the connections to local resources to help find jobs or identify opportunities or find particular service providers. Expand your skills. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. You can join us on Slack, even if you're not a member as well. So we have some job posting and maybe marketing news updates there if you would like to participate. And then finally, you can volunteer with us. We have a number of open positions available for the coming program year. So please drop us a line at volunteer@amamadison.org. Or you can certainly go to the website and amamadison.org/volunteer to learn more. And my apology for the latency on my computer. It's definitely taking a little bit of time to move to the next slide, but why don't I just take the time now to introduce Dr. Sarah Stebbins, a former Madisonian who's now out in Lake Oswego, Oregon. She's a sought-after leadership coach and organizational change management consultant. She's dedicated to working with clients to facilitate the better change. Clients include leaders from Fortune 500 companies, government, colleges and university, and large diverse nonprofit organizations. We're very pleased to have Sarah join us today. And without further ado, I will give you Sarah Stebbins.
And I want to do a share screen. So let's see. Here we go. All right. It is a real pleasure to be with you today. And this is a topic that has, excuse me, I think gotten renewed interest as a result of the pandemic. And I'd like to start, I really would like to start with reading some quotes from people that I consider to be pandemic thrivers rather than survivors. And I really want you to listen closely to these quotes, because I'm going to ask you a question and you can put your response in the chat box or just shout it out if you want to. But here are some of these quotes, and I really would like to have you hear these. So much loss has happened during the pandemic. There is kind of a YOLO attitude I picked up. If not now, when? Because tomorrow isn't promised. I love my new job and the hardworking healthcare workers I get to support every day. My old career and new career are coming together in ways I couldn't have dreamed of. The toxicity in my workplace. I was laid off for 6 months during the pandemic, and the quality of my life literally skyrocketed. I was called back to work in September 2020, and it really brought to light just how toxic my workplace had really become. In August of this year, I had the opportunity to purchase a small food cart with my daughter So I jumped at the chance, quit my job of 10 years, and I have never been happier. So when you hear this, what are some of the messages that you take from these quotes? Just out of curiosity. Opportunity? Yep. Good. What else? Anybody just want to give a shout out? Liberated? Indeed. Okay. Well, my big takeaway from this is the title of this talk, that we are not our job. You're not your job. And I just find it interesting that it sometimes it takes a crisis for us to step back and do this kind of self-analysis of what's really important to us. And I'm just wondering what it would be like for us to integrate into our lives a way of thinking and a process that is going to allow us to constantly reevaluate who we really are in relation to work and life in general. And that's what we are about to learn today, that we are really going to learn how to establish a mindset. I'm going to have to move this over a little bit so you can see this. Really create a mindset and apply it to a process that we can use throughout our lives. We don't have to wait for a crisis. We can start using it now. We can start integrating it now, resulting in more balance and meaning and control over our lives. And this mindset that I'm talking about really starts with a commitment to self-reflection. We hear this all the time. I'm always amazed when I go on LinkedIn. I see people sharing articles or sharing their own postings about the importance of self-reflection, the importance of being able to step back and really do self-evaluation on where we are in that moment and where we are long-term. And I just really kind of chuckle about that, because I'm seeing it so much, it makes me wonder if people are really doing it. We have to constantly be reminded. And so I think that what's critical about self-reflection is that it gets us in touch with what's important in our lives, in our personal values. And again, we know intellectually that this is an important piece, but do we really do it? Do we really understand? Do we really do that deep dive that is so critical for us to learn about ourselves and emerge with what's important to us, rather than being focused externally, that we allow our external world, our work world in particular, to define who we are. So this is really a critical piece. Now, you might ask the question, well, how do I do this self-reflection piece? Well, let's start with some basics, some basic suggestions. Number one, put 15 minutes on your calendar once a week. That is your time. Just start there. Very simply, block out time. Make it the same time every week. Your calendar is blocked. Nobody can bug you, whether you're working in an office or whether you're working on Microsoft Teams. You're busy. Nobody needs to know why, but you're busy. And in that 15-minute time block, do some journaling. What's important to you in this particular moment in time? Just jot, and I'm not talking about developing an entire book, but just some stream of consciousness writing about where you are at that particular moment. What's important to you in that day? How does that fit in with your long-term ideas of where you'd like to be? Just get in the habit of doing it. No one's going to read this but you. This is not going to be published. This is strictly for you. The other thing that I would suggest is unplugging. Get out in nature. I am a great hiker and I'm a great walker. I love getting out in nature, and I feel very fortunate that where I live in an urban forest. And so getting out into nature is very easy for me. I don't take my phone with me. I have my dog. my little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, whom I hope will not disrupt this this session with barking. He's known to do that. But I think that getting out in nature and getting away and getting unplugged, I don't take my phone with me. It is very refreshing. So for me, it is a 45-minute respite, 45-minute to an hour, sometimes longer respite a day that I am not connected. I'm not connected to technology. And what that has done for me is really give me the opportunity to allow the creative mind to come to light. I love being in nature. I love being among the trees. There's a lot of wildlife here. I see it, and what it does is just spark things in me that I can then turn into something that is going to be work related. So for me, this is really critical, and I just encourage all of you to find that thing, to find that activity that is going to allow you to be unplugged and allow your creative juices to start to flow. I don't know if any of you meditate. Meditation is becoming so mainstream now. It is not, I used to be accused of being woo-woo when I talked about meditation. I am not a good meditator, I admit it, but I do find time in the early morning when I first get up to fix myself a cup of tea and just be with me. Close my eyes, do some deep breathing, and just allow my mind to quiet and get ready for my day. This can be very helpful. This can be very, very helpful. So self-reflection is really a critical activity. It is an action. And I cannot emphasize the importance enough because of this piece right here. Because as we self-reflect, as we start identifying what's important to us, our personal values really do come to light. And that becomes the basis for the creation of our story of who we are. I think that ask yourself the questions: what is truly important to you? What do you value most in the world? And if you were to identify the top 4 or 5 values in your life, what would they be? Can you do that? I go through this exercise periodically, and I find that some values change and some don't. Everybody says, the values are the cornerstone. They're chiseled in stone. They're never going to change. I don't buy that. I think that there are some fundamental values that don't change. For me, integrity is a value. Well, that hasn't changed over time. But there may be some other values that do change. And it's important for you to check in with yourselves and understand what they are. The next question is, after you've identified them, is how are they showing up for you? How are these values showing up for you in your work? I want to give you an example. My best friend, Lori, was feeling very restless in her current job. She was the philanthropy, director for a nonprofit here in Portland. And she called me one day and she said, I'm just feeling uneasy about my work right now. And we talked more, and it was becoming pretty clear to me that she was allowing herself to get caught up in the kind of the unhealthy politics of her organization. And I started asking her some questions. Lori, what drew you to this position in the first place? What drew you to this position in the first place? And how has that shifted over time? And where do you see yourself now as opposed to where you to when you started? I asked her to focus on those questions. And she went away and pondered that and came back and said, well, here's the deal. I recognize that one of my most important values, that of being an initiator and a creator and a builder and a change agent, is not showing up for me right now. And it hasn't been for the last several months. I said, well, so what does that tell you? Well, fast forward, in a week, she starts a new position as an executive director of an organization that she is literally going to be building from the ground up. So this is, I think, a really good example of how a value is driving her career. Okay. So the key point here is that your values become the foundation for the creation of your story. Now, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about a story that reflects my aspirations, your aspirations. You know, the old adage of what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, it starts with a story, and I really want to spend some time working with you on the elements of this story because it drives everything else. So the first thing I want you to describe in your story is complete the sentence. I am what? What are you? You're not just a marketing person. You're more than that. Describe yourself in as much detail as you can. Add color to this. I am creative. I am social. I am, what is it? Really spend time fleshing this statement out. Once you've done that, move on to the next one. I believe. This is who I am, and this is what I believe. And this is where your values start coming into play again. I believe what? I believe in equity. I believe in social justice. I believe in fairness. What is it? So I believe, and again, add as much detail and color as you possibly can to this statement. All right. I'm seeing a lot of input in the chat here. I want to make sure. Oh, how do you unplug? I see you're just capturing the notes. Got it. Okay, very good. All right. The next question that you need to add, next statement that you need to focus on here is, my work in this world is best described as what? Now, work could be paid work. In other words, what is yours to do? And how is it described? If someone, and Steve, since you're the only person I can see on the screen right now, I'm going to pick on you. If you were to ask a friend of yours, Steve, what yours is to do in this world and how to describe it, how would they describe you? And you might even ask someone to do that, to give you some insights. Okay. So what is your work to do in this world, and how can you describe it? And boy, add as much detail and color as you can. It is, you want to drill down and get those nuggets, really identify them. And if bouncing this off of a good friend will help you do that, I encourage you to do it. Okay. And then last but not least, and I hope you can see this, what my work world looks like. Again, this is aspirational. And I want you to focus on as much detail as you possibly can. What type of people are you working with? What type of people are in your environment? What is the place? The place could be an office. The place could be at home. The place could be on the moon. I don't know, but really in as much detail as you can, describe place. Place could also be a state of mind too. Think about that. What is the culture? What is the culture? I don't think I need to go any further than that. You understand what culture is? So what is the culture that you are surrounding yourself with? And most importantly, how does all of this relate to your life in general? Okay. Somebody asked me some time ago, well, gee, Sarah, are you going to retire? Now, I will tell you folks that I am 73, going to be 74 in June. I'm healthy. I love what I do. So somebody asked me, well, when are you going to retire? And I said, I don't view retirement in a traditional sense. I really don't. My work is my play. That's how I view my work. My work is my play. I do it as a volunteer. I do it as paid work. It is values driven, and it is fun, and it is challenging, and it stretches my mind. And I want to continue that. As long as I can continue to walk and keep my mind sharp, I'm going to continue doing this. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have other interests in my life, but what I will tell you is the work that I do, the work, quote unquote, that I do that is fun for me shows up in a variety of ways. I happen to be the lead singer in a band, and it's very interesting to me how everybody in the band sees me as the default leader. I bring my work, I bring my expertise, I bring my skill to the band. So it shows up in a variety of ways for me. My work is my play. It is fun. All right. So here's the next thing that I want you to think about. Once you get this story identified, I want you to self-reflect on these questions. Now, I don't have this in a slide, so bear with me. I'll do this slowly. What excites you about the story that you've created? What is your emotional response? How do your aspirations make you feel? And what thoughts came up for you as you were creating your story? So you've got your story here. Now do some self-reflection on what this really means to you in terms of emotional response, in terms of where it could lead you next. Really want you to get in touch with that. Now, I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I have had many, did I say many? Changes in my life since my divorce 5 years ago. And I have come through a great deal. And I decided to step back and reflect on how I was able to manage all of these changes. And I journaled about my experience. I even took a rafting trip down the Colorado River because I wanted to kind of, again, being out in nature, cleanse my mind. And really the seeds for this book were born on the Colorado River. And so I really started envisioning a book, including with some of the pictures of my Colorado River trip. And what I envisioned was that my message of that book was going to go out into the world and attract to me like-minded professionals who believed in my approach to understanding change and my values. Now, I have given you a thumbnail of what that story is, but I really went into detail. And so I just want to share with you. Here's my book. It happened. It came out in March of last year. And as a result of my book, I have now attracted to me a wonderful coaching and consulting opportunity with an organization called Lucidly. We are a virtual coaching and consulting organization. And this, I call them my tribe. This wonderful group of people came to me as a result of my book. They sought me out. So yes, I do believe that it works. Now, the book was what I affectionately call the what. I had to kind of somehow create the how. How am I going to do this? And that is where I want to take you next in giving you a process. I've started introducing a process here, but now how do we activate it? How do we make it work? And that's what I want to talk about next. Let me just stop for a second. I'm seeing some things in chat here. Okay, cool. Does anybody, let me just stop for a second and just ask if anybody has a question about what I'm talking about here before I get into this next piece. We have a little bit of time to do a little Q&A here, and we will have time at the end to do Q&A as well. Anybody have thoughts, reactions, questions?
I had a question.
Yes.
So you're talking about the creation of your story. It is your story, and then in terms of, what you're thinking about your story, your emotional response, where will lead you next. I mean, it's all internal. Is there ever a point where you would bring in anyone from the outside to validate some of this or what they may see?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good question, Steve. And as I was formulating this idea for this book, I sat down with my BFF and I said, "Am I crazy?" I gave her my story. I gave her the details. I went through this whole thing, and I said, "Am I nuts? I mean, what do you give me some feedback here?" And the feedback was very profound. That she supported completely my idea and my notion and my approach. Absolutely. And she was also devil's advocate. Have you thought about this? Gee, what about this? I mean, yes, definitely. Now, the one thing that I will say is I would be very selective about the people that I share this story with. You are making yourself vulnerable. You want to be with people that you trust, and I would not make it a cast of thousands. I would select maybe 1 to no more than 3 to run this by. Okay, people who know you, who will be direct with you, and be kind. So that's a good question, Steve. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, sooner or later we got to get out of our head and get feedback. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Question or comment before we move on? And by the way, I will just tell you that we have more than one story. Okay, so I'm speaking in kind of general terms, but I've given you a very specific example of how the story works. Now, I have a greater story of how I want to work in my new environment. So we always have stories. The important thing is, and this is going to come up as I show this next slide, the story is the start of a process that we're going to be going through right now. Okay, so always start with a story. Always start with a story. So let me go back here, Steve. I'm going to move you over a little bit, and we'll get to the next slide. So I don't want this next slide to be intimidating. I'm going to walk you through this. This particular slide is based on the work of this most amazing book called The Future You by futurist Brian David Johnson. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. He was a futurist with Intel Corporation. He was based here in Beaverton, Oregon for many, many years, and I became familiar with him quite some time ago, and have kind of followed his career. He is now at Arizona State University, heading up their, for lack of a better phrase, because the title is a mile long, I'll just say their Futurist Institute. And he wrote this book that I emailed him and thanked him profusely for writing the book. That I love this model. I love this model, and I'm going to walk you through this because this is how we activate our story. Okay, so let me start here. So here's your story. This is the story of your future, whatever it is, whether it's my book, whether it's your job, whether it's your family, doesn't matter. Whatever your story is, this becomes your future right here. This is your aspiration. This is where you want to be. And this is obviously your present you. So once you have your story really well defined, then we've got to start taking up, Brian calls these future forces, You can ignore that language if you want to and just say, okay, so what are the elements? What are the pieces that are going to help me activate this story? And we start with people. So who are the professionals, the mentors or close friends who might support me on this journey? Now, when I finally arrived at my story of my book, that yes, I am going to do this, and this is what it looks like, et cetera, I started focusing on people who can mentor me through my process. I have a good friend who is an author, and I said to her, hey, I'm thinking about writing this book. I'd like to pick your brains periodically on what this process was like for you. Not that her process would be my process, but going into the writing of this book, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I started identifying people in my life that could help me with making this story come alive. I found out about a group called the Willamette Valley Writers Group. This is a group of people who are not only authors, but aspiring authors, and they meet once a month to talk about their projects. You bet I got hooked up with them, because again, it was one of these things where I was in a learning phase. I needed to understand what other people were experiencing so that I could kind of formulate what my pathway was going to be here. So people are really, really important. The next thing we got to do is identify the tools. Is there a class that I can take? In the case of the Willamette Valley Writers Group, they put on a writers conference. I attended their writers conference. Now, this was done virtually because of COVID, but they brought in people from all over the country to be part of this conference to share their expertise. By the time I got to the conference, because of the people that I had recruited here, I knew enough to at least know the questions to ask in these various workshops in the conference. This was a very, very critical tool for me, this conference was, because out of that conference, I identified experts that can really help me move this book forward. I found a book coach. I found a book editor. I found a self-publishing company, an expert with a self-publishing company that I liked a lot. Those were the experts that became my team for getting this book out of the door. Okay. Oh yeah, and a graphic artist. I was able to identify a graphic artist that was going to help me. So this took time. We're not talking weeks here, we're talking months of identifying the people and the tools and the experts and just allowing myself to get in this flow of information gathering and talking to folks. Now, what's important about this process, so here you've got all of this information. What do you do with it? How do you actually plan out what's going to happen with all of this information? Well, Brian David Johnson talks about start with halfway. If you are halfway through getting this book out the door, Sarah, what would halfway look like? Well, halfway would be continuing to write new content, but constantly revising that which has already been written to hopefully get it into its final form. Okay, well, that seems like a reasonable halfway point. Now you'll notice that there is no date here. You have got to, at least for me in writing this book, boy, I'm sorry, hang on a second. In writing this book, I could not realistically come up with a timeline because, well, the creative process cannot be assigned. Let's just put it that way. There are some days I felt like writing and some days that I didn't. But I just settled on halfway is I'm writing content and I'm revising that which I've already written. Partway for me was hiring the editor and the book coach, because these are the folks that are going to get me started so that I can get to my halfway point. And then what can I do today? Where do I start this whole process? Given all of this information that I have generated, what can I do on Monday? What can I do today? And what I came up with was obviously researching and identifying those experts that were needed for my project. So I've identified them up here. So now it's a matter of contacting them and developing those relationships. That I can start doing right now, because that's going to help me get partway. So let me stop for a second. And I want to stop and ask for questions, reactions.
I'm sure somebody must have a question for Sarah. So Sarah, I just want to, while some people are formulating it, I just want to partway. So partway is really defining what is it that I need to do in order to get at least part of the way to halfway, right? Or at least get, what do I need to do to take a few steps?
Right, exactly. And the reason why that's important is that it's incredibly overwhelming. Looking at it from the big picture. I'm a big picture thinker, and I can get overwhelmed pretty quickly. And so to be able to break it out into some bite-sized steps was really critical for me. Really critical. One of the other things that I started doing on Monday, present time, something I can do today, was committing to write 30 minutes every day. That was something that I could do. And that served me well. My best time to write is early in the morning. So I'd get up and write for 30 minutes. It wasn't perfect, but it was getting word to paper. That's what it was about. And I go back and take a look at some of those initial writings and I go, oh my God, who did this? So that was one task that I could do right away. And of course, over time, that just accumulated and the writings became the book.
So in your case, it was the writing, you didn't go back that 30-minute block of time. It was always focused on something that was new. You were never going back and regenerating on
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. Because what I would do once I had my book coach and book editor hired, whatever I wrote for that 30-minute time block, it was off my desk and onto them, because I did not want to get into analysis paralysis of going, oh my God, I need to wordsmith this. Because I knew that would stifle my creative process.
Right.
So I just got it out the door.
Yeah.
And so the halfway for me, between partway and halfway, was this ongoing conversation with my book editor and book coach about what it is that I wrote.
Right.
That's where the revision piece for the halfway came in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm trying to put it into, for if I were to go out and start something completely different and something completely new, I think what you're saying is whatever I do as part of that Monday, whatever time I dedicate is time I dedicate to my future vision. I just put in place whatever I need to put in place to make that future vision happen.
Exactly.
And I don't take the time I during that space in my day, I don't take the time to go back and revisit. I just keep going forward with what I've got.
You just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
Thanks.
It will come full circle at some point, but at least initially, you just keep moving forward. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Good. More thoughts, questions, reactions? So I guess what I want to leave you with, and we can then just have a discussion about this, is that this idea of you are not your job is really true. The job is part of a much larger you. And what I'm offering here are some tips and a strategy for allowing you to constantly be in touch with that larger you. And I know that the commitment to doing this work can be a very difficult thing to do, because we're just pulled in so many different directions. But what I know from my own life is, in total, the quality of my life has improved because I do this work on a regular basis. So I just encourage you to establish that mindset, the commitment to self-reflection, and do the deep dive on the values the way we talked about, and creating your story, whatever your story wants to be, and then get into identifying the elements of that story to support that story, the people, the tools, the experts, and so on. By the way, I am very deck with you if you would like to have it. That's fine. So if you want the graphic, I know you have recorded this session, Steve, which is great. But if you actually want to have the slide deck, I'm happy to email that to you, Steve, and you get it out to the people who participated.
Yeah, we definitely will send it out to folks that not only are here today, but that registered for the session, and then they can have it for themselves.
Great. So let me just ask, where are you with this information right now? It's a lot to take in, I realize, but just your initial reaction to what it is that I have presented. Why did you come here today, and did today help?
I got to open it up to anybody that's out there on the line. If you want to unmute yourself, go right ahead.
I have some thoughts.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very thought-provoking. I quickly want to get to the end of my story and be in a place that you're at, where work is your play, because I don't think many of us are, unfortunately, in that position right now. And so this is helpful to maybe, and occasionally I think we all find ourselves, looking at different job descriptions or postings, thinking that maybe that job is out there that will give us that. But I like this process of it. It starts with yourself and defining kind of your story, and then what would that ideal work life balance position, what would that look like? So this is really helpful, defining the process. I'm starting to see that, and I think networking is something that's been harder to do these last 2 years, and so that keeps us all more siloed and maybe not making as much progress in growing as professionals and embarking on new challenges and things. So yeah, there's tools available. So I guess I don't know what I'm saying, except that I don't know where I'm at, but I feel like I like this process, and maybe tomorrow it will resonate even more with me.
Well, thank you, Dina, for being so open about that. When you said, every now and then you see a job, and I'm wondering if that would be a good fit for me. That's the end result of this work. That's not where we need to start. And
right.
So, yeah, networking is difficult. I would suggest to you that going through this process is going to make networking easier, whether it's virtual or not.
Yeah.
Because you will have clarity. You will have clarity about who you are, what you're about, and what you want to attract into your life. So I would challenge you to start this process, and don't give up on it.
Thank you.
You bet.
We had a question in the chat from Kristen. Kristen, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and ask it yourself, because I can just read it verbatim, but you probably provide a little more.
I can read it verbatim as well.
maybe
Go
if you
ahead,
had
Kristen.
a little more flavor behind it too.
I'm sure it's different for everybody, but I was just curious about how often, like, what is your sort of time cycles for revisiting this process? And it's probably more or less like a continuous cycle, but I'm just curious, like, what do you recommend in terms of, like, I don't know, the revisiting of
Well,
the story?
all of us are different, of course,
Right.
Kristen. But I would say if things are going well for me, I'll check in once a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say things are going well, I'm feeling fulfilled, I'm happy, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't want to just be part of the status quo. In other words, if I'm happy, what's making me happy right now? so that I'm continually learning about what's going on. So if things are going well for me, I would say for me once a quarter.
Yeah.
If things are a bit of a struggle, I would do it more frequently than that.
Right.
And because what it does is it keeps you honest with yourself. Gosh, it was just like that quote that I read you about the toxicity in the workplace. Had she been able to participate in a process like this, she probably would have made a change a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because the process keeps you honest with yourself. So if things are not going well, or you're feeling really challenged, or you're on the verge of burnout, man, do it more frequently. Definitely.
Love that.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Good question.
Is there anybody else that has a question that they wish to ask? Feel free to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, I have a question. So
Yeah, Karen.
how do you kind of get that momentum going? So I'm kind of in the middle of the process. Like, I've done my values a few years ago, and I revisit those every once in a while, which are, if anybody hasn't gone through that process, it's extremely helpful. But I'm trying to get to that point where, like, I look at the vision and I act towards it. And I'm just kind of like at a standstill. Like, I can't just get that momentum going. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for that.
Well, I would go back to the graphic that we had about the people, tools, and experts, and I would start there.
Okay.
Again, it's just not looking at this whole thing from a big picture standpoint, but it's taking bite-sized pieces. So who are the people? And do some brainstorming. Who are the people that are going to that I trust that will give me feedback on what my vision is. And I think if you can start there and put some time into that and talk, the vision is going to become more clear to you. It may even look a little bit different than what you originally came up with.
Sure.
So that's where I would start, Karen. And I think that you will find momentum picking up as a result of that. Because right now you're operating in a vacuum. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to do it on my own, and I'm thinking like, oh, this is my job, or this is for me. So it's something I have to do, but that's a great point.
So yeah, start identifying those folks close to you that you want to be part of your team on this.
Thank you.
Start leveraging that. You bet. Good question. More.
Anybody else?
I have one.
Yeah.
So you brought on the slide of the self-reflection process.
Yes.
How much is there like how much time should one dedicate to completing that particular part of the process?
Oh, I wish I had an answer for you. Let me put it this way. As I was pondering my book, I continued to do self-reflection, not only with myself, but with other people close to me, until I felt complete. How long did that take? To be honest, Cameron, I don't know. I don't know how long it took. I know that it took longer than a day. I know that it took longer than a week. I go through self-reflection now every morning at 5:30 in the morning when I get up. I read something that kind of sparks my interest, and then I just sit with it for a period of time and see what comes up for me. Sometimes something comes up for me, and sometimes something doesn't. Sometimes it's not even related to my ultimate vision. So self-reflection is both an ongoing practice, I would say, and it's also very outcome oriented to your vision. And so how much time is it going to take you? I don't know. All I know is once you have your story complete and well, no, let me put it this way. Once you delve into your story and you're bringing, you've reflected on your values and all of that good stuff, you're going to know when your story is complete and you're ready to move on. And I don't know how long that's going to take. So I would just trust yourself to know when you're ready. How's that for not answering your question?
No, it just sounds like it seems like it's kind of like it's more of a case by case type of ordeal. It may be shorter time for some more than others type of ordeal. I just thought if there was like a general rule of thumb that one should follow from that perspective.
I really, let me put it to you this way. It is the journey and not the destination.
Okay.
How's that for confusing things?
Yeah.
But it really is. Self-reflection is a journey, not a destination. Now, you can use it as a way of developing your destination, which is what your story is about. But self-reflection in and of itself is really a journey.
Okay.
I'll add to that, Cameron, too, because I've always gone through this. I go through these periods of time where I am constantly self-reflecting or thinking about where I'm at and what I'm doing. And then I go through periods of time where I don't do that and I lose it. And I think this is me personally, where I lose my way is when I fail to save time, spend time self-reflecting. And I think I'm always on a better path. I always feel better about the path I'm on when I do take the time to self-reflect and do that type of activity. Yeah, I don't know that from my own personal experience. And I've had a few different changes in my life, and over the course of the past few years, I think when I've made the effort, it's been well worth the effort to do the self-reflection. So. And
from the shameless self-promotion department, I will tell you that a lot of what I've talked about today. Can you see my book?
Not really, because
not really. Okay. I'm going to have to get rid of my virtual background in order to show it to you, and then you're going to see how I really live. Oh boy. Let me.
But if you did get on the event page, we do have it in Sarah's biography, and I'm sure we'll also put a link to it in our. There you go. That's better.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to it in in the email where we have the slides and.
Yeah. This book really is all about self-reflection as it relates to understanding how change impacts our lives. It really is about self-reflection and gives you some good strategies for that. So, anything else?
Anyone else? One last parting thought, parting question? I guess not, Sarah. Well, Sarah, I want to thank you very much. It's been very helpful. I think, especially for, starting off the year, and especially the time that we're in now, I think, and I speak to a lot of people who are in this kind of catch-22, they're not really happy with what they're doing, with where they're at. And, if they were exposed to a methodology or thought process like this, I think that would help them to get over this malaise or whatever it is that they're feeling right now, help put them on a good path. So thank you for sharing your methodology with us, and hopefully folks were able to get a lot out of this.
You're
session.
very welcome. It's been my pleasure. It really has. The one thing that I will say to you is the importance of this work is only going to accelerate.
Mhm.
Somebody said to me at the end of 2020, oh boy, end of year, we're going to get back to normal in 2021. I said, don't count on it.
No.
I said, it's not just the pandemic. It is all of the changes that the pandemic has thrust upon us. We are in massive transition as a people, as a society, and as a world, quite frankly. And there's a high degree of uncertainty, and we've got to get comfortable with that uncertainty. And I believe that this process can really allow us to be proactive during these times of uncertainty rather than being a victim of it. And so the importance of this work is only going to grow. And those of us who can jump on this bandwagon and do this work, we're going to come through this time in good shape. So that's my parting comment to you all. And please feel free to reach out to me too if you have more questions. You've seen my email address down there at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to get in touch with me, and we can talk more.
Sounds great, Sarah. Thank you very much for speaking to us today. Everybody that's on the line, everybody that's joined us today, thank you for taking some time out of your day to learn more as well. And we appreciate your interest and your involvement. Thanks for the great questions, folks. Appreciate it.
Yep, it was good. Steve, I will send you the slide deck when we're done.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.
Bye-bye.